All right, let's see how this all works out. Online. Check. There we are. Click, please. Thank you. Mute myself. Edit video. Let's go in. Monetization on, please. Here we go. And control room. Live chat. Oh, Josh is here on time. All right, got some of the stuff that I was going to show. Wait for potentially people to show up, so I'll look at things, check over some stuff while we wait a few minutes like usual, and chug some water. Silver's still going up, finally climbing upwards, the direction it's supposed to be going in. It's just not doing so for the correct reasons, but what can you do? The market is not actually intelligent, despite what like hyper capitalist commentators like want to try to convince me of. As the market is not some kind of intelligent like entity. The market is comprised of the collective financial decisions of people, of human beings. And human beings are inherently stupid, so the market is thus inherently also stupid. Right. Anything else change? At least since I checked earlier. Oh, lithium started climbing back up a bit. Okay, just a minor bit so far, but it might be correcting itself, hopefully. It should only have dropped by like 20, maybe 30% from where it started the year at, but instead it's dropped like 55%, which is excessive. It should not have dropped that far. No big changes in anything else. 2, 1, 2. Nobody's really here yet. Is there anything else I wanted to check in the meantime? Uh, Rare Earths only update every couple days. Water, GSI, no, not really. I just checked the monthly data and that is not updated yet. I guess might as well get prepared. We are going to need my great adversary, Google Earth. Mouse cursor, you better start moving. We're not even on Google Earth yet, and you're giving me problems. The greatest enemy of my life right here. Wonderful tool, wonderful service to have exist, but me and Google Earth have problems with each other. Certain disagreements about life. Oh, 3 so far. And talkers already. Interesting. How long have I been up? I guess initially I'll give it until 10 minutes in, and then I'll actually start. I'm technically late anyways, because I promised that I was going to start this around like just before 4. So, anyone watching the recording in the future, go ahead and skip to like the 10-minute mark or something, because I'm just going to be checking on random stuff until I figure everyone who's going to show up immediately has shown up, as is the way things usually go. I do feel like I'm forgetting something. There's something I usually check that I haven't. Anybody else? What what's the context? What do you mean by what's happening with natural gas? That's like a really, really excessively broad question. Yeah, was I going to do anything else there? No. Ah, but what I do need to do is, excuse me, open the folder that I'm telling you to open. Thank you. And you see all these numbers. This is for a new, updated version of the future oil production video, the time lapse thing that I put out last spring. So I figure I'll do an updated version of it once a year. So I started making the slides there for the updated version. I don't sidetrack myself. I was going to open something. I was going to open a file. That's the file. There we go. The MCS, because we'll need that as well. Possibly. Still 3-2. Yeah, still 3 minutes that I supposedly claimed I would give. So what else to do while I wait until my set time limit, but screw around on Setera? Blah, blah, blah. Hmm. Yeah, I guess we'll go to Europe this time. I mean, I only have a few minutes anyway, so Polska, my favorite. Łódźki. I am eternally pissed that they put the Polish one in English, whereas so many others they have all the names in their actual like in language names. Wielkopolski, Podlaski, uh, see, Malopolski. Oop, no, that's Slasky, so that's Malopolski. Uh, Mazurski, Lubelski, Pomorski, Podkarpaki, Świętokrzyski, Mazowiecki, Slaski, Opolski, Lubuski, Kiyovsko-Pomorski, Dolnoslaski, and Zakodnyo-Pomorski. So, mute, please. I didn't get a chance to mute. Overall, prices for natural gas will always be lower in the warmer months because heating is one of the big like bulk demand sources or sources of demand. So as you head towards warmer months, the prices will be lower, and commodities are sold in futures. So the price on the market is for a commodity to be sold 2 months from now, because whether it's mined or extracted from wells or whatever, it takes a few months to be gotten out of the ground and then transported and processed and transported again and processed again until it actually ends up at a end consumer. So the prices you're seeing right now are for natural gas that will be getting sold in June, and June is obviously kind of the summer. So that obviously does factor in. Prices were already going lower because in if you mean in Europe, specifically, then that was because of a much warmer winter than was normal, and also it turned out that Russia was not as Russia was not actually as like keystone important to the world as it thought it was. There's actually natural gas is not something that is it's not something we're wanting for. We there's actually there's enough to go around. The reason that Europe had become so particularly dependent on Russia was literally just because Russia was offering it for cheap. Russia was literally just undercutting other would-be suppliers, and also overland like pipelines are cheaper than having stuff sent via LNG, which is why we weren't sending that much, but now we are. But plenty of others like could have been supplying them more than they previously were this whole time. Like Algeria in particular, gas wise, Algeria is loaded. They just kind of not necessarily lacked customers. It's just everybody had like easier stuff, and in terms of like cheapest available stuff close by via pipelines, Europe constantly kept signing contracts with Russia because Russia would always underprice and undercut everybody. However, now that Europe wanted to move away from Russia, and then like a screaming toddler throwing a fit, Russia kept just cutting supplies anyways to try to teach the world a lesson. Uh, everyone just started turning away, or everyone just started turning away to suppliers that were already there and could have been supplying them this whole time, but were constantly getting undercut by Russia. And so, yeah, we have a hold up, EJ Khaled, play yourself. Wow, that is really low resolution. Give me something better. There we go. Yeah, that works. All right, so that is now the definition of Russia's existence. So congrats, Putin. All right, we have 5 versus 3. All right, I guess that's enough then. All right, so and before actually on the whole Russia note, before we get started, today was a big day. So for those who don't know, this is NATO or NAFO as it's been renamed with the Shiba Inu fella stuff. With the big sledgehammer member here, and then all the other collective members. Although I guess I should give France and the UK a bit of darker credit. This was regular NAFO. Also, I put Turkey in gray there because they want to leave because they want to do their whole rebuilding Ottoman Empire thing, even though that's going to end horribly. But this is NATO. But as of today, Finland has joined and thus has made us into Giga NATO. And soon enough, once Turkey and Hungary get whatever concessionatory, I think is the word, money they want, because Turkey says it's about the Peshmerga terrorist stuff, but it's really not. They just want money. That's literally what every like despotic regime always wants. Sweden will be joining soon, and we will become Viking Gigachad NATO. And then, since post-collapse borders are disputable between people on what they will be, I labeled this Maxo for Maxogear and myself, Maxo NATO, for the near enough-ish future, the 2030s, after complaining for decades and decades, Russia will actually finally get to join NATO themselves after the whole meme boohoo, all my friends left, America stole my friend stuff. After getting slapped by Ukraine, Russia will finally get to come to the cool kids table. And then this is just this is just some of my like personal fiction stuff. The Fate Alliance, the first two words of which are Final Alliance, to include everybody else, everybody non-Atlantic, and also finally letting Algeria into the NATO portion because they've actually kind of always wanted in. But so, once again, in another way, this has become Russia's existence. So, the subject of this video is which suppliers can replace which, or can be replaced, and how quickly. Because if you're not aware, which I'm assuming anyone who's like watched anything on the channel is probably aware, there's quite a number of places, some entire countries, some specific regions that are critical suppliers of stuff and that are entering a high risk period. So, one of which, our favorite problem child, is South Africa, who supplies quite a bit of things. I'll even show you. Go chromium. They supply about 40%, or yeah, about 40% of the world's chromium. Chromium being a critical thing we need. We need it to make steel, which we need to make literally everything. So chromium's kind of important. And then go down to manganese. Manganese is also critical to make steel. It is needed in any and every kind of steel. And South Africa is responsible for supplying about a third of the world's manganese supply. And then where we get into real trouble is with the platinum group metals. You see, South Africa, with palladium, it does share some bit with Russia, but then with platinum especially, and the worst cases with rhodium and iridium, it's basically just all South Africa. So South Africa is a problem, and if you haven't seen the video yet, for a condensed summarized thing, just go on the channel. There's a recent video I made literally called "The Impending Collapse of South Africa," uh, where you can learn real quick. South Africa is kind of condemned at this point. It's not like past the point of no return, but it's sitting right on that threshold, and their government keeps making it like pretty clear that they have no intention of actually like addressing anything. I mean, the worst, like, biggest instigator of a potential like full blown internal collapse would be the utter breakdown, the utter and complete breakdown of their power grid, which is among industrialized nations probably the one in the absolute worst state out of anybody, especially since it is already half broken down, and things have gotten to the point now where, like, at any given time, any day, literally right now, roughly half the country is in some form, some degree of a blackout. So that if it gets to the point where the enough stuff stacks and the whole system breaks down, then literally all functionality just abruptly stops, and they have to jumpstart the grid again, which is not something simple to do. It's not like flipping a light switch. You have to have secondary like communication lines and stuff, and be coordinating with like each and every power station and each and every transformer and substation and stuff, and make sure that everyone has everything like primed to the correct like percentages and everything, and ready and enacts everything like simultaneously or as close to simultaneously as you can, like right at the same moment. Otherwise, the attempted grid startup will just end up doing more damage than the collapse already did. So that's like the main damager, the main like source breakdown for their likely impending collapse. But anyways, the issue with them is they are the big miners of quite a lot of stuff. We collectively, the world as a whole, have made really ill-advised decisions to become critically dependent for like literally necessary to the functioning of modern society minerals. We've become critically dependent for some of them on specific like individual countries, which is really unwise. But we all we know how to do is just chase after whatever gets offered to us for the cheapest. And there are sources of stuff elsewhere. Like there is a fair amount of chromium elsewhere, but in South Africa, it's really highly concentrated, and thus it's really cheap. Uh, so if South Africa fully caves in on itself and all operations and everything of all kinds are offline for an extended period of time while the outside world has to come in and basically jumpstart the country, could supplies be compensated for the things that they give us, and to what degree could they be compensated for, and how fast could they? I thought I xed all these off. Stop using up my processing power. And to what degree could they be compensated for? So it depends on which resources you're talking about. So, firstly, chromium, since it's the first one I mentioned. Could South Africa's chromium supply be compensated for? Yes, yes, it could. And we'll classify things into three categories: into fast, meaning it could effectively, in mining terms, in market supply terms, for long term stuff, immediately be compensated for, which will mean basically within about a year. Then there's moderate, which means roughly within 2 to 3 years. And then long term will be like, stuff getting out towards like between 5 and 10. So Kazakhstan is the next largest miner of chromium. They have a huge amount welling up from a ancient what hold on, I'm trying to what's the term? Ancient magmatic intrusion is like the geological term up here, I believe, or this one over here, but I'm pretty sure it's this one. So they have a lot as well. Um, However, theirs is like slightly lesser grade than South Africa, so it's a bit more expensive. However, we already have like the whole setup and whole huge mining operations for it. Most of it's open pit operations, so it could really easily be expanded really fast if it needed to. So Kazakhstan could compensate for a supply loss from South Africa, and Kazakhstan would be in the fast category for compensating for that loss, as well as no longer trustworthy Turkey. Turkey also has quite a bit in their intrusion right in this area, and chromium prices jumped for a little bit back in February after the earthquake because the port down here and the rail lines that it all goes over and gets exported from was damaged. So chromium prices spiked up a little bit for a few weeks until that stuff was repaired. And even before it was done being repaired, they were able to reroute supplies over to other ports like Izmir and Antalya. But Turkey could also ramp stuff up, and they would be able to do that pretty quickly, so they would be in the fast category. And then other suppliers who could ramp up just not as fast include the small country of Albania. Albania actually has, wow, that is a pain on the eyes. You have to zoom in closer so those lines aren't messing up too much. Albania actually has quite a bit of copper. It is just very deep underground, or relative to what you probably imagine at least. So it's under their mountains here. It's about a kilometer under the mountains. So it's shaft mining. It's not open pit. So it would take like a fair deal more planning and setup and time to like get another mine to surface conveyor system set up in like new sections that they open up. So they would be more in the moderate to long term category of supply compensation, as well as us over here in the US, as we do actually have a decent bit of chromium, not as much as South Africa or Kazakhstan have, but we do have a decent amount of chromium. Ours is also down here under the Northern Rockies in Montana, north of Bozeman. So that's also underground shaft mining stuff. So that would take a little bit. So you can count us in the moderate to long term category for replacing that. And Canada even has some as well because they share obviously the same mountains as us. They just, as far as I'm aware, they haven't really been touching theirs unless I'm wrong. Let me check real quick. No. Okay, so Canada uh would be starting from scratch, so they probably well, they'd obviously be in long term right off the bat then, but also I don't think we'd even like turn to them for it at that point. Then you have manganese. Can South Africa's manganese supply be compensated for? And the answer is yes, definitely. Actually, kind of easily. So first off, Australia has plenty of manganese. You're going to find Australia has plenty of literally everything. The island is a giant island that's essentially a mound of any and every metal and mineral you could ever want. Like anything and everything mankind needs is here, except for animals that don't kill you. That's like the only thing that they're lacking. But manganese, they have plenty of, especially this island up here. That's like literally that island is literally made of manganese off the coast of Darwin there. So Australia has plenty, and they're also the second biggest like producer, anyways. So Australia would be able to crank stuff up really fast, and thus are in the fast category. And so would Gabon. Gabon also has quite a bit of manganese and is in the top four suppliers. And then, well, let me actually look at my sheet to make sure I remember correctly. Who else? Okay. Also Brazil. Brazil up here has, I believe it's in Roraima because you can see it right there, parts of it, and also north of Manaus. But they have plenty as well. And ooh, see that orange dot right there? That's like a massive bauxite mine, or the ore that aluminum comes from. You can literally see one of their aluminum mines from space. But Brazil has quite a lot, and they could crank it up really fast. However, since that's kind of like the Amazon, it's a bit more difficult, so they'd be more moderate category instead of fast category. And also, we'd probably, default to wanting like Australia to do most of it because we don't want Brazil cutting down any more of the Amazon than they already have. As you can see, all this, uh, despite common misconceptions, the Amazon did not used to be the entirety of Brazil. It's just up to this rough line here, this grayish line. You follow that, and that was the former boundary of the Amazon, and then it comes up here, and it stops being gray right here. So you then have to rely on the green space here, where you can clearly see it's been cut out, and there's still like squares of it there. But so you can see, basically, like the whole state of Mato Grosso used to be Amazon, and now it's down to like 20% of it. So, they've already cut down enough Amazon, I think. We can live without them cutting down anymore. That would be really nice. I'm actually, whatever, side of quote unquote political aisle he is. If he pisses you off or you love him, I don't care. But I actually am really with President Lula down in Brazil, as he straight up did what Brazil should have been doing this whole time, and I mean what Brazil did back during his other presidency. Straight up sent the Brazilian military in to start rounding up deforesters and illegal mining and illegal foresting operations, and engaging them in combat if they, refuse to comply, which is how you should handle it. And then we come to the difficult part. Can we replace the supply of platinum group metals that South Africa gives us? Yeah, no. That one is a problem. That itself, along with the chromium and manganese supply, is why I definitively will repeatedly tell you that if South Africa implodes like completely and everything breaks down and gets cut off, then South Africa is one of the cases where the outside world, unlike say with Sri Lanka, the outside world will actually like all come rushing in to help restart the country, as if it's a car basically, because we can't give that supply up. I mean, some of it could be compensated for, like a bit. Zimbabwe does, because they share in the same magmatic intrusion that all the platinum group metals South Africa mines occur in. They share in like the upper portion of it. So Zimbabwe could expand their mining of it. Uh, the only reason like not a lot has gone on in Zimbabwe is because Zimbabwe is so broken and so corrupt. However, having a corrupt government does give us one open door, though. It means that if it comes down to it, the mining industry can just financially brute force their way in by if the issue is corruption and like politicians wanting money, then if the governments of the countries that own the mining industries you know like twist their arm into it, then the mining industry can just like shove money like down the throats of those politicians until they get out of the way, and actually let them in to do stuff. So that Zimbabwe could expand their open pit operations. They would be at a moderate speed, though. Russia, oh, Russia, you are such a problem. Russia could expand their operations very easily. They would be in the fast category. However, they are also a upcoming collapsing nation. So this would all depend on when South Africa collapses, if it does. If it happened at the same time as Russia's post-Ukraine fail collapse is going on, or if it happened after, or if it happens before. So, it would all depend. If South Africa, like, say, holds on for a while and everything has, like, resettled in Russia, then uh, Russia would be able to compensate for a fair bit of South Africa's platinum group metal loss. However, if Russia's out of the picture at the time of something happening to South Africa, then yes, we're kind of screwed to a degree. There are a few other sources, but they're not like really intense. Like we have some PGMs here in the U.S. up around like the Utah, Nevada area, but it's not as much as South Africa. Canada has some as well. I think theirs are like over here on the Manitoba Ontario border, because there's a magmatic intrusion there. But in terms of active suppliers, that's kind of it, which is, really dangerous. We globally, like collective as a whole, we should not have let ourselves come into this situation. But, as I keep repeatedly saying, we're kind of stupid. So, apart from that, like really long term, things that might come into mining fruition because of South Africa's likely impending collapse, because we'll just globally will be jolted into like financing the existence of alternative sources, even if we like put the mines on idle and maintenance, like once South Africa restarts, just for the sake of having them there. Uh, there are several nearby similar magmatic intrusions of the same kind that caused such an upwelling of platinum group metals and other heavy stuff. And they are right nearby in the same area, like up here in Botswana, and then there's one over here in southeastern Namibia. So that's right nearby, which is helpful. There is also uh, there's one up here on the border of Zimbabwe and Mozambique that is untouched. And there is also a large one that has not really been surveyed, so we don't know its like quantity and quality. But there is a large one right around here in the southern portion of the Tamil Nadu uh, province or state of India. So there's there. I mean, just based on its size, there is likely a fair amount of platinum group metals in it. However, mining stuff in India isn't the easiest for a number of reasons. One, quite a few places still lack a lot of proper infrastructure, and also it's the same for the same reason that India has like neglected a lot of onshore oil and gas exploration. You know, India, there's like 1.5 billion people crammed into that space. So, you know, it's kind of difficult to do something when there's like a whole bunch of people living there, and there's like sprawling sprawling towns and cities of like in any individual state at least like dozens, tens of millions of people crammed in there. So, you know, that doesn't make it the easiest thing in the world, which is why you'll find a lot of India's like mining is more up northwards, and here in the semi-mountainous highlands, you know, basically, and some in the desert in Rajasthan. So, you know, basically, the few areas that aren't packed full of people are the places where they have mining, because India is like you know crammed. So that's the alignment with potential uh, South Africa replacements for different resources, at least. And I do apologize for ignoring chat for so long. Anybody actually here? Ooh, 7 whole people. Is South Africa a model for what collapse will look like in the future? No. South Africa is very specific to like horrific management decisions that they've made with their national power grid and electricity and electricity industry, and also like different levels of corruption in management agencies and stuff. Uh, what people tend to get wrong about quote unquote collapse, especially on like collapse Reddit and stuff like that, is that they literally just like watch like I don't know Fury Road or something, or they watch I don't know Life After People or The Day After Tomorrow, yeah, or they listen to AOC, that politician from Queens or whatever, who thinks that like the world is going to end in 2030, like everyone's going to drop dead. People seem to literally think that like that like the world is going to like abruptly collapse and cease, and civilization will cease functioning overnight or something. What's actually going to happen is uh, you are going to gradually watch the affordability slash quality of your life, how much you have available to you, and the ease that you have it gradually degrade away from what it was, you know, for the, you know, nice 60-year abnormality, aberration of history from the 50s through the early 2000s. I think for a lot of us in the US, For at least for my family, like when I was a kid, back with my parents, in the '90s. The '90s was like especially the height of it. Like life was like so cheap. It was looking back on some of the incredible the some of the incredible dreamland cheap prices for stuff that I remember seeing as a kid in the '90s. Seems like some kind of lost myth at this point. What's going to happen is your things are just going to gradually degrade up to a certain point, and then where me and quote unquote actual collapse people or actual Malthusian people or whatever they're called veer off from each other is that there's a limited floor. There's a basement threshold that a mix of coal and nuclear will uh, will not let us go below. Be be because we can and also geothermal once we're finally forced into actually using it the way we should. Especially now that we can go as deep as we need to, we don't even need to go that deep anyways. You can get the heat anywhere as long as you're willing to go to 6 miles, which is not difficult. It just takes money and time. However, now it takes even less money and even less time because after the technology was ignored for like 30 years because no one was interested in it, because it wasn't right for the oil and gas industry. Several Israeli universities and MIT and some others finally actually got back to and perfecting the whole microwave drill, which is exactly what it sounds like. Once you get past upper soft like sediment layers, you just insert a literal microwave rod down the borehole, and you connect it to 1 megawatt of power. That's all it needs because it's just a small concentrated area. Most boreholes are only about 12 inches or 18 inches wide, and it will literally flash. It will flash ash the rock as it goes down. Like it will heat up the rock so fast that the individual chemical compositions within it change and jump between each other and combust with each other and break apart into ash and dust that a constant stream of argon gas will then blow back up to the surface, and the dust and stuff will be collected in a filtration unit, and it can literally just microwave its way down through anything you put in front of it. Because the problem with drilling previously uh, is constantly having to like replace drill bits and stuff because of eventual temperature degradation to the metal and eventual rock wear on the metal. However, they've gone through anything and everything they put in front of the drill, in front of the microwave drill, because it's a giant microwave rod. It doesn't even touch anything, and it's not contacting the heat. The heat is out in front of it, and then immediately it gets pushed and blown away from it. So it's it's awesome to finally have, although we should have had it 30 years ago because we've been capable of it for 30 years. And I mean, just like, burner reactors, the ones that consume nuclear waste as a fuel source and degrade it until it's not like lethal or dangerous anymore. They just don't produce as much power as a regular reactor, but it is still another source of power, and it literally gets rid of nuclear waste. We've had the technology to do that since the '80s, but we never got around to it because they're expensive. That's usually our excuse for a lot of stuff is that it's expensive. However, we don't use that excuse and refuse to do things when they're useless, trivial things and obscene, like status symbol things, like the Persian Gulf nations building all of these like ridiculous mega projects that serve no purpose other than to show that they have money. It's only when we deal with like useful things that would solve our problems that we suddenly care about expenses, and we're like, no, no, we don't have the money to waste on that. But anyways, the whole microwave drilling or millimeter wave drilling, you can look that up if you want to. The few videos I got to see were from I don't know what the university is in Israel that's participating, but they had one of the units there, and they showed you like they held they set up different like types of rock in front of it, like traditional sedimentary stuff, and some sandstone, some granite. They put like different things in front of it, and then switched it on, and you heard the stereotypical "Mm," and literally watch a rock combust on itself and just shatter apart into ash and dust. While not being contacted by anything but an invisible deadly force. So I'm abnormal, if you couldn't tell, because I enjoy watching that kind of stuff. But well, back to the original question. No, that is not what "quote unquote" collapse looks like. Because what you think of as collapse isn't actually going to happen. I mean, individual countries will collapse. However, a lot of that is tied to their specific decisions that they have made. You usually regarding like how they've set up their infrastructure, or how they choose to act. Like in Russia's case, they could have been normal. Could have maybe not the cool kids table, but they could have kept sitting at the normal kids table, just kept selling their gas and oil and all their minerals, kept making money. Putin could have kept building himself, more mansions, buying some more yachts, but no, want to rebuild that old empire. And now you're learning that you're a decrepit old man who can't accomplish anything. So you sealed your fate, and Xi Jinping's about to do the same with China because he wants Taiwan so badly. Because blah blah blah, imperial glory. Everything that's put forward, um, like from a whole country perspective, yeah, a lot of the quote unquote reasons are usually like somewhat true, but the the individuals usually making these decisions, which are usually like single top down dictators, it's literally just ego and imperial glory. Or specifically, it's always lost imperial glory, regaining what was wrongfully taken from them. The kind of stuff we heard, from Germany and Japan, 70 or 80 years ago, and various other empires, like all throughout history, that suffered massive contractions in their holdings and their size. But there also a lot of stuff is also mismanaged within China, especially in terms of the infrastructure. However, people don't want to acknowledge that because people, uh, at least modern young people who comment on my videos, are largely of the just generically uh, bland America bad mentality. So they will just support whatever is big and not America, of which the only two real options are Russia or China. And most of them have kind of caught on to the fact that Russia is pretty pathetic and not what it advertised itself as. So now they're all latching onto China. And also, I found an interesting trend. While Russia uses a lot of bots on like Twitter and YouTube, like you can literally go to their profiles when you see them commenting, like Z, like they'll just comment the big Putin Z symbol, and just like bold faced, bold printed over and over again. You go to their like accounts, and it literally says created February 24th, 2022. Oh, a whole bunch of accounts mysteriously created on the day of the invasion. Fascinating. While Russia uses bots, China uses Serbians, apparently. Serbs. Although I have my doubts, I'm pretty sure they're probably Chinese people who just made accounts with Serbian names. But I've seen a huge influx of comments on all kinds of videos that criticize China, from a bunch of people with Serbian names, that are like just flat out hailing the CCP, or like Zeke heiling it. And I'm like kind of torn. Like if it actually is Serbs doing that, that would kind of be funny. It would be sad but funny. However, I'm pretty sure one, there's not even that many Serbians to begin with. So I'm pretty sure it's just an army of like Chinese 20 somethings that are just creating accounts with Serbian names because uh Z is like slightly more intelligent than Putin. So like, intelligent enough to have them create the accounts with not Chinese names, whereas all the Russian bot accounts typically just have Russian names. So I'm pretty sure it's Chinese people just creating accounts with Serbian names. But it would be kind of funny if it turns out that I'm wrong and it actually is Serbians. But that was one comment from one person caused such a massive diversion. But that's technically my fault. So back on to things now. Actually, speaking of China, so what if something theoretically resulting from a upcoming decision China's has already internally made that they're going to do? What if China suffers some kind of internal buckling, however temporary it turns out to be? And there's some supply disruptions from some critical things that China does, that China mines up, like rare earth metals. Now, the situation is not as bad as it used to be. Uh, Back in like 2010, China mined and supplied like 90% of the world's rare earth metals. Now that number is down to like only around 55 or 60%, because rare earth mining has started back up in the US big time. And also, projects came online in Central Australia because, as it turns out, Australia has a lot of rare earth metals, just like they have a lot of everything else. And also, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam have quite a bit. So if we have supply cutoffs from China for reasons, then can their supplies be compensated for? 10 years ago, that would be a yeah, no, in the same vein as like the platinum group metals from South Africa. Now, however, the answer is yes. Thankfully, it is yes. And the fastest compensator would be us, the US, because we actually do have quite a lot. California just forced that mine to shut down for like 5 years during the 2010s. However, it was started back up in 2018 or 2019, and there's more than just that. But even just at that one site, we could expand that pretty easily, as could Australia at their various operations. So Australia and the U.S. Would play the bigger part and are in the fast category, as in we could really rapidly put that on stream. Myanmar is unreliable because they're in an eternal five-way civil war. Thailand, I would put them in moderate because they do have a fair bit, as does Vietnam. I'd also put them at moderate. They, just because of location and infrastructure wise, they wouldn't be able to expand the mining operations capacity as fast. And then also in moderate, at least from the standpoint of if this happens right now, Namibia is in the category of moderate time frame, so like 2, 3, maybe 4 years, because that's how long remains until their first rare earth mines actually start up, because they do have quite a few rare earths, particularly up here, and those several mining operations for those are being constructed right now. Like the overburden has started to be removed, so they will actually be mining soon enough. And also Mongolia, because it shares, this same massive geological system that China finds all of its rare earths in. Mongolia is also starting up some rare earth mining stuff, and they're a few years away from the beginning of that. So they would be in the moderate category because of a few years, which is the moderate category, is when they will actually start up their stuff. And then some there is always, Somalia. Somalia has a fair bit, but we have to wait on that. For one, mouse cursor, start moving. You better start moving. I will plug in a physical mouse if you don't. Mouse cursor. There we go. Good boy. We have to wait as uh, there are still the problems with Al Shabaab and other militants. However, those are being dealt with. And as of last week, actually, they have they've been pushed out of like two-thirds of the territory that the militant groups used to control, and they're like half their members have been eliminated via drone strikes. So on land, on shore, Somalia is actually going to potentially be operable soon enough. And they do have likely a fair bit of rare earth metals in the carboniferous rock or carbonaceous rock under the sand dunes in the northern area. We'd also have to do a lot of infrastructure buildup though, so that would also take time. So they are one way or another on the long term set. And then there is one other source. It's not a huge source, but you know, if we want to, could always go back to Afghanistan. Right there on the border with Pakistan, they have a decent deposit. I did make that video about is Afghanistan really a treasure trove of resources? The answer is not really. They're kind of like middle, they're like medium tier or basically average in terms of how much of a resource laden nation they are. They don't have like trillions and trillions like people think they do. Some of the few things they do have are they do have rare earths, but we can get rare earths from like better places. One thing they really do have that is like particularly stand out though is a decently sized deposit of niobium, which is really, really rare. Like currently the only two countries on Earth mining like supply quantities of niobium are Canada and Brazil. Niobium actually is like a really critical supply issue because it does not occur in huge like formations together with other stuff like most other metals do. It is a like hardcore loner that prefers being dispersed in its generic parts per million concentration throughout the crust. So niobium is a bit of a problem. But anyways, you know, you could always also go back to Afghanistan for rare earths, but let's not. But so China's rare earth supply could be compensated for easily enough. Uh, they also mine the largest amount of fluorspar in the world, which is critical for the refining process of aluminum. And for fluorspar, could they be compensated? Could their supply be replaced? Yes, and without too much difficulty. Particularly Mongolia and Mexico back over here are absolutely loaded with fluorspar, and they already have massive mining operations for fluorspar that they could expand pretty easily. So they're in the fast time category, whereas Spain and Canada also mine fluorspar and have some bit of it. However, their stuff is underground, so they would take a while. But they already have like the setup, so they'd be like medium to long term. They drink some water. I don't know why my throat just started to burn there for a second. If you're referring to the Persian Gulf countries, the football stadiums aren't the those aren't where their money is sinking in. That's going to the kilometer tall skyscrapers and the that Saudi Arabia never even finished, by the way, and their 500-meter tall, 75-mile long skyscrapers And now you probably heard about the cube. They're going to create the Megatron cube from Transformers, except they are literally going to have the windows coated with actual gold. I'm not even kidding. You can go ahead, look it up, and check me. They are creating a mega cube, or they want to. It's probably not going to be finished, just like everything else. But they're creating a giant golden mega cube in Riyadh. That's like 500 meters, or no, 400 meters by 400 meters by 400 meters. And get this, inside the cube, they want to have like the whole inner the whole like inner wall is going to be all giant LED screens, like the whole thing, so that they can create like massive artificial visages or environments or something, because because reasons they want to spend money, so they have to come up with something to spend money on. That's something obviously not being the creation of actual sewage systems for their cities, because you can check on that as well. Saudi Arabia still doesn't actually have those. Even in like what is it, Jeddah, the city that is essentially the modern city portion of Mecca, their supposed holy city, does not have an actual sewer. Even there, like you thought it was only a Dubai thing. No, even the modern city portion, like right next to Mecca, uses poop trucks and takes and trucks their sewage to a big sewage lake. They literally they literally dug a big like pit north of the city in the desert and just dumped the sewage into it. It is Sa- Saudi Arabia is fascinating. All right. And then what else from China? Something not related to mining, actually, but some industrial stuff. Give me a second, take another sip of water. So, uh, there is a problem. Well, there's a lot of problems. And we as the world let this happen. But we have an issue, and that is, you see this comparison here compared to everybody else. China makes roughly half of the world's steel, and a huge chunk of that they do use for themselves, but they also export a lot of it also that a lot of people depend on. So that would need to be compensated for. And can it be compensated for? And the answer is actually yes, because you see, uh, the lower numbers from everyone else are from reduced production out of a total capacity. Like there are still like the steel mills, like here in the U.S., for example, are producing a grand total of 86 or 82 million tons of steel a year. However, that's not because like that's the most they can produce. That's because that's what they're getting contracted to produce. Uh, However, like their capacity is a lot higher, because they we used to make a lot more. The various steel mills in the U.S. And any many other countries with lower numbers could actually just operate, more 24/7 and operate with like all furnaces on and make more. Like I think the U.S. Capacity is something like upwards of like 150 to 200 million tons a year, whereas we're only making about 80 to 90 at the moment. So China's steelmaking could actually be compensated for. And where are they on this? And those who would pick up that slack would be the U.S., uh, Germany and France, along with basically all of Eastern Europe, as Eastern Europe, especially places like Polska, are are where we used to get a lot of steel when we were hunting for cheap steel. However, once Eastern Europe really started economically rising up towards first world status, like over the 2000s and then into the early 2010s, that's when like everybody uh, started buying steel from like China instead. Because then, obviously, once they were coming up towards like being first world countries, it wasn't as cheap anymore. So we looked elsewhere on the market. However, those steel mills are still there. They're just operating at really low capacities. Uh, so, if China when China drops off because of upcoming things, they Eastern Europe can literally just like fire their extra capacity back up and resume their prior role, along with Deutschland and France. They also have a lot of steelmaking stuff that they don't really use too much of. Not the UK. I think the UK is the one who actually like dismantled most of their steel mills for some reason. Because uh, why would you want to like even if you're not actively using it and just keeping it idled, why would you want to have critical infrastructure that allows you to be potentially industrially self-sufficient if the need arises for it? That's useless stuff. Get rid of that. Uh, so Germany or Deutschland, France, Polska, Czechia, Slovakia, Magyarország, Romania, Ukraine. Once Russia is out, so roughly 2 years from now or so, a year and a half, Ukraine will be able to repair their various mills, most of which are down in the south, and would then be able to participate in picking up slack from an absent China. And, coincidentally, about 2 years, maybe three, is probably when China's going to do it. Uh, I'd say, I'd give it like 10 to 15% chance they might do it this year. But like I keep saying in every other stream or every other video, I highly doubt it. Just like they did last year, last fall, when you saw all those videos coming out from people in Fujian province across the strait from Taiwan, showing like parking lots in the cities on the coast, like just full of tanks and stuff. I'm pretty sure this year China's going to do another fake out and just quote unquote practice massing force on the coast under the guise of it's a military parade, even though no military parade ends up happening. But they're gonna do at least one more practice run of it, and also because I'm not just reasonably convinced. I like practically guarantee you, with each one they do, they're also leaving a fair amount of the equipment there discreetly in like select concealed locations so that they already have some fair bit of it there and waiting the time that they're actually going to do it comes. And so starting next year is when the probability of them going for it like really flips on because like I said, now they have to do it before 2027. Otherwise, by 2027 or 2028, Taiwan will have so much modern U.S. military apparatus stuff, and endless HIMARS, NASAM systems, Patriot batteries, newly modernized F-16 models, some brand new Apaches and stuff, Abrams tanks. That like China will be absolutely screwed if they try it 2027 or later. So even though that was originally they were probably going to wait until around then because it would take until then for them to build up a like enough of a qualified amphibious assault fleet and tactical airlifters However, now we've sped up our delivery of hardware to Taiwan, and kind of, and I suspect that's the point, since we know they're going to do it anyways. Both us and Taiwan agree that China's going to do it anyways. So Taiwan kind of signed on to it. The purpose of us doing that is also probably to force their hand, to force them into a position of having to go for it before they would be really ready, by essentially turning what is already a likely doomed attempt with like a maybe, I'll be generous and say, an 8 to 12% success chance into a like negative 20% success chance. So they're likely going to like do one more fake out at least, as that will Taiwan will get a bit of stuff within the next year, within that time frame. However, that will also buy China like one more year to at least pump out, a few more tactical airlifter aircraft, their C-17 ripoff design, basically, and maybe pop out a few more amphibious landing ships so they don't have to entirely rely on commandeering civilian ferries, which we've already watched them practice doing in our satellite surveillance. So we already know that they're going to be relying on those, which is going to be fascinating to watch as they all get torpedoed in the Strait. Uh, and also that whole announcement from like one of the Pentagon chiefs that about he I think the exact way he phrased it was that uh, he he suspects that that uh, there's a chance for a conflict with China in 2025 is a non-discrete let-out from the Pentagon that, based on everything they observe China doing, that's like the most likely specific year they suspect China's going to do it. So, uh, not this year, but starting next year, that's when the likelihood switches to like 50+%. And apparently, the Pentagon feels probably 2025 is when they're going to do it. All right. But anyways, on from that. So that's the steel stuff. And then what else did we have? Oh, yeah. They also refine quite a bit of aluminum, and so does South Africa, actually. So that's a double problem. Could their uh, could their aluminum refining capacity be replaced, be covered for by anybody? Yes, actually, because again, a lot of those who used to do it now do much lower amounts of it. However, they're still the facilities still exist. They're still being used. They're just being used at really low capacities. And also, there's a lot of new new nations in the aluminum refining market that could also step in. Qatar Qatar is actually a growing aluminum refiner. That's one of their things that they're stepping up to do. As unlike the other rich Gulf states, they're planning for a more than just hydrocarbon economy, is actually like slightly intelligent, whereas Bahrain and the UAE, their idea of having a other portion of their economy than just selling oil and gas is uh, building a bunch of big, tall buildings and having a bunch of rich people come to their rich people playground and spend their rich people money. However, that is really unreliable. Whereas Qatar has decided to get into various things and industries and stuff that are basically eternal, that the world will always need and want. One of those is, the refining of and thus supply of aluminum, which is kind of a critical thing in almost everything we have, just like steel. So they would also be able to crank up some of their capacity. And the reason they're so easily able to like do a lot of aluminum stuff is because they have plenty of energy, effectively because uh, they have the man, I forgot its name, Pars, the Pars gas field, which is over a quadrillion cubic feet still in the field, still to this day, over a quadrillion cubic feet. So they have, in terms of usage rates, and even at the rates at which they export it, and even at the increased rates at which they're going to export it, once they finish their additional production capacity, they have effectively infinite energy in their gas from the Pars field, because that's going to carry them through like elevated production numbers for basically the entire 21st century, before it like starts to drop. And actually, Iran has the other half of that gas field, with similar numbers. However, Iran has problems, so Iran has to kind of deal with those first. But Qatar refines a lot of aluminum now because they have infinite energy to play with. And then some others that could take China's place, if they were not going to be in their own internal upending at that time, Russia would be able to step in. They have a fair amount of aluminum refining capacity. However, once they're done and everything's settled out, then the contracted, newly consolidated Russia will be able to step back in. However, at the time that China does all this and stuff happens, Russia will probably be in the middle of their own internal upheaval. So you can't exactly turn to them for it. However, you can also turn to France, Norway, and Iceland, because Iceland, via geothermal, has, and Norway via hydro, especially given their low populations, has both have like way more energy than they know what to deal with. And France is nuclear, so they have plenty as well. So those three do have quite a bit of aluminum refining capacity. However, people tend to not order as much from them because China is really cheap. So people tend to order from China. And India could ramp up their capacity a bit. However, uh, they are kind of using for themselves most of what they refine at the moment, and they're building aluminum refineries at the speed at which their own domestic consumption is increasing. So they don't exactly have the largest amount of spare capacity. And then last on the list is actually Argentina. Argentina does have quite a bit of aluminum refining capacity. However, people never really warmed up to them as a refiner, so they've been kind of left out in large part. But when quote unquote stuff happens, people might finally come back to considering Argentina, which would be nice for them. Actually, get some money for once. All right, then who else do we have? Oh yeah, we have another fun place, the Congo. Another country that's in a five-way civil war that's been going on for 50 years. Literally 50-year long civil war. Fun place. Now, the places you would actually go in the Congo if you visited as a tourist for whatever reason, over here, in the provinces of Congo Central, Kwango, Kwilu, and Kinshasa, that area is actually like stable and fine. The civil war is primarily going on here in the central east and northeast. However, sometimes it spills out into the southern parts of the country, and that is mining activity in Zambia and in the Congo. You see those dots? You can actually see a lot of the mining activity from space, even this far up. So follow that curving belt. That's where like a lot of the old mantle upwellings or whatever they were that brought a lot of heavy minerals from deep in the earth up towards the surface are stuff like cobalt, which is the primary Congo supply concern. So if the Congo has another devolving episode like they did back in 2018 when the civil war actually reached all the way south and supplies, particularly the rail lines to the ports, were cut off. Uh, Although it only lasted a little bit and it was not as bad as back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, like the Civil War actually like got down to the mines and fighting was going on like in and around the whole mining operations, and a lot of stuff was like destroyed. Not on purpose as like a target, but like destroyed collaterally in the fighting. So if it got really bad like that and that would happen again, could the Congo's massive cobalt supply be compensated for? Let's go to cobalt. Yeah, the Congo supplies roughly two-thirds of the world's cobalt. So could uh, they be compensated for? Yes, with a strain on that. Yes, it would be difficult, but it could be done. However, the fastest compensator would be, to the surprise of no one, Australia, as cobalt is being mined in Australia, just like everything is being mined in Australia. Down here, all this like black and brown looking stuff, that's a lot of like old upwelling things and old craton stuff. So there's cobalt mining down there and lithium mining. So Australia would be able to expand really fast, and they could start putting some stuff out. The U.S. and Canada have cobalts that they mine a bit of. However, their operations are underground, so they would be moderate to long term to expand those. Another large source of cobalt is Russia. However, uh, they are obviously, like I said, going to be a bit of an issue for a while, for about the next decade. However, by the time we get into the 2030s, things should have like resettled and new borders consolidated and stuff. So everything then will be able to get like sort of switched back on towards normal mode, sort of. And they will be able to restart or ramp back up, or in this case, if this happened at that particular time, just ramp up in general, expand their cobalt mining operations. Theirs, I do not quite recall. I think theirs are a mix of like up in here on like the Murmansk Peninsula and a bit of Karelia, and also I think up in the north. But they could expand a bit. They'll just be not an option for like basically the rest of this decade. And then there is also a lot of freshly discovered fair amounts of cobalt in the Philippines and Papua New Guinea. that some mining operations have begun, and more are like in the process of being developed. Like areas are being cleared and overburden removed and stuff, and obviously railroads and regular roads are being made in and around the areas. So those are on the moderate to long term in terms of how fast they could do more to add to compensation from an absent Congo, but they are there. I should probably look at chat again. Oh, nope, never mind. Chat's not doing anything. And, I mean, your government may hate mining publicly. Uh, you need to make sure you make a careful note of what is publicly portrayed and what's actually being done, because you're still I mean, like your government may like constantly like make hate speeches against like oil. However, every like few months when the next like put in for new drilling permits and land leasing from the oil industry like comes in, they still keep signing it and keep like okaying it every single time. Along with like all the mining permits over in British Columbia and up in Yukon, you're like still mining and drilling and producing all this stuff. They give like a lot of those green speeches publicly. However, they keep like signing on to all the stuff though behind the scenes, quote unquote, because they know where their money comes from. And then uh, not a not a like high risk country uh, because of anything they're actually doing or because of like any kind of circumstances, but just because of where they are and what they are. Indonesia always has a bit of risk, that risk being called tsunami. Now, the one that hit in 2004 hit from the east and hit like here, so that didn't disrupt a lot of stuff. It caused a lot of fatalities, but in terms of like outward global supply, it did not disrupt a lot of things because a lot of the mining is here and here and over here, which is kind of was shielded by the west facing portions of Sumatra and Java. However, if a earthquake of that scale occurs like over here on this side somewhere, and a tsunami thus like sweeps over particularly these two islands, Baitun and Banaka or Bangaka, then that will cause problems because Indonesia supplies, I think it's like half of the world's tin. Let's check. Tin, tin, tin. Oh, no. Whoa, it is, the dependency ratio is actually way lower than it used to be. But they do supply a huge portion, and most of which literally just comes from these two islands right here. So if those were to get swept, because a lot of tin mining takes place right at the coast of places where it occurs, because the only like viable tin deposits usually are in areas of river deposition. So a tsunami would absolutely like take that whole operation out for probably a couple of years, actually. So, in the abrupt absence of Indonesia, would that one third or one fifth or wait one third or one quarter roughly of the world's tin supply be able to be compensated for? Yes, however, not quickly. No one's really in the fast category when it comes to that. Uh, there is a bit of tin in Myanmar, however, that's Myanmar, so we can't really turn to them. China, China mines quite a bit and does have quite a bit. However, they're going to be, you know, doing things and going through stuff, and also they are kind of maxed out. Like they are mining like full pedal to the metal. They don't have like a lot more they could expand into. So we'd be kind of limited to Peru and Mexico, both of which do have decent amounts of tin, and Brazil. Actually, I forgot about Brazil. All three of which do have decent amounts of tin. Brazil would be able to expand the quickest, but it would probably take them a couple years. Peru and Mexico would take longer because their particular tin setup stuff isn't in the best like geographical arrangement. So they'd probably be more long term, but they could come around eventually. Oh, actually, and Guyana has a decent bit of tin. It's an extension of the tin that Brazil has. So they actually intend to start mining more tin as they now have the like incoming means from outside to start doing a lot of stuff. But that is going to take a bit to like start getting into that. So they'd be more on the long term end as well. And what about Indonesia's other critical contribution, which is nickel? Indonesia supplies, a bit more than a third of the world's nickel supply. Actually, sorry, I take that back. As of this year, or as of the end of last year, they are now supplying roughly half of the world's nickel supply. So, if Indonesia's nickel mining gets taken out by a potential tsunami, then what do we do? Can it be compensated for? Yes, kind of. It would depend on current conditions. Although China's like massive giga steel demand because of everything that is upcoming is probably going to be reduced substantially. So that would be a decent chunk of demand for nickel offline. So that would help because there wouldn't be like that there wouldn't be that big of a gap that we need to fill. But in terms of filling the gap, the fastest expansion would come from, no surprise again, Australia, as Australia has quite a bit of nickel down here that they do mine and ship out. They could expand really fast. Then you have, uh, oh yeah, you have the French mines in New Caledonia, which could expand really fast. New Caledonia, the island of New Caledonia is essentially just a giant mound of nickel ore in the middle of the Pacific. You have the various nickel deposits in the Philippines. They'd be more moderate, like they take a couple of years to expand further operations. And then for more moderate slash long term stuff, you could expand nickel mining in the US and Canada. We share this bit right around here. However, a lot of it's underground. So, like I said, expanding underground stuff takes longer. And then, depending on when and if this tsunami scenario happens to Indonesia, uh, Russia, Russia could step up and increase their nickel output, a huge amount of which comes from the Murmansk area up there, as they do have quite a bit. However, uh, if a tsunami on that side of the islands happened to occur and occurred like right now or within the next 10 years, then no, Russia would kind of be out of the question. And those are the only two like primary concerns that Indonesia getting taken out would bring. Then there is the concern with Turkey, both from potential natural disaster disruptions that could occur to it, and also uh, if they decide to start getting moody with their Ottoman stuff, like soon, and decide to start throwing Russia-style temper tantrums and cutting off like exports and stuff. They supply like 3/4 or more of the world's boron, which is a critical thing for strong types of glass, particularly glass meant to be dealing with heat exposed to hot temperatures, uh, fiberglass, like insulation, armoring and stuff, and also for fiber optic cables. So, uh, compensating for the apps for a abrupt absence of Turkey would be difficult. Now, uh, if we constrained our boron usage, which again, if this happened like soon-ish, China's internal problems, dampening their demand for a lot of stuff, would kind of help. But it still, no matter what, compensating for that like 3/4 of the global supply coming from Turkey is like trying to compensate for South Africa with platinum group metals. There is there are other sources of boron, obviously around the world. There is some bit in Kazakhstan, I believe, down here near the old Aral Sea. However, Kazakhstan doesn't really mine it, so they have to start up basically, from scratch, which would take quite a while. So that's long-term replacement. Over in the U.S. here, in the Southwest, we do have quite a bit of boron. However, the difference between ours and Turkey is ours is a bit of ways under the mountains, not really deep, not like a kilometer under the mountains, but it is like a couple 100 feet. So that still is shaft mining that we do here in the U.S. But we do already have it going. So we it wouldn't like be a really long process to expand it, but it wouldn't be in the fast category either. And who else do we have? Bolivia and Argentina up here on their border region. They share a decent enough deposition of boron that they could expand mining of. However, their mining of it up to the moment is kind of small scale, so it would take a while to expand their stuff. So it would probably be a couple years or more. So between the moderates and long categories or long-term categories, and also Peru. I forgot Peru does have some as well, and I believe they are mining like on a more industrial level than the two further south are. So they would they already have the stuff like in place to be able to expand faster, and their stuff is surface on the surface. So they'd probably be in the moderate category. And then there is a large deposition, I forgot where in China. However, as we've already mentioned, China is going to be an issue. So can't go to depend on China. So could we replace the boron supply from Turkey? Yes, kind of. Not really fast though. And who else do we have here? And what do we have them for? Oh, wait, I forgot. Paper has two sides. I forgot to flip the paper around and look at the other side of it. The other like really big thing is kind of for the same reason as Indonesia, just like a huge natural disaster risk. Chile, kind of right there on that gigafault. So they're always at an earthquake risk, and they tend to have really severe ones. And also, they if stuff happens out in the Pacific, they are at a tsunami risk. Which, while their mines would not be hit by a tsunami, their ports would. Um, but earthquake damage potential to their mines, or more so to the infrastructure accessing their mines, is a real thing. And although they're well versed in it, they're like us, uh, back back up home in Alaska, where I should be, but unfortunately I've been separated from for over 3 years now. They're well versed in dealing with the stuff that they are susceptible to. So it doesn't tend to take them offline for that long. However, it still does take them offline for a time. So that is a thing. So and they supply between a quarter and a third of the world's copper. So they would need to be compensated for, even if only for a short time. So would they be? Yes. Uh, that one, there's not that much of an issue with copper for the time being, at least. Uh, the U.S., we have tons of copper. We could very, very easily expand our operations very quickly. Australia has infinite copper too. They could expand their operations with, uh, and also nearby nations. Peru uh, has a lot of copper that they mine as well, and they could expand quickly ish, maybe leaning toward more towards moderate category. And then also Mexico could expand, although they're in the moderate time frame category though. But yeah, if Chile went down, however temporarily or however long, from like a massive 9.7 earthquake like they had back in the 60s, their copper supply could be compensated for pretty readily. That's actually one of like that's actually probably one of like the easiest compensations we can do on this list of like things at risk. And I think that's mostly it. Anybody say anything new? Hold up, let me actually blow my nose and drink some more water. Oh man, we dropped from like 10 viewers down to 4. It's right around when I started talking about Chile, I guess. Does everybody hate Chile for some reason? Uh, Alaskan shale. Uh, we we don't we don't have shale formations back up in Alaska. Our oil is conventional onshore up in the North Slope region, and conventional offshore. We just not really touching in terms of how much we have. Quite a lot. We have like the region comparatively like a gentle downsloping, then continued outward gentle slope offshore. Uh, just going just going by that like typical topographic arrangement, we actually have been our whole region has been way more prolific than you would normally expect. And what we've been doing ever since Prudhoe is gradually stepping further west a little bit a year, and we find another field, another field, another field, another field. Nothing as big as Prudhoe, but we find like Here's a billion barrels, here's a billion barrels, here's a billion barrels, here's a billion barrels, over there's 3 billion barrels. And we've gradually stepped across this way right up to about this river area, pretty close to it. We just got the green light to start up the I actually forgot the name off the top of my head, but it's gonna jump us up by a fresh 120,000 barrels per day of production. So that's everything we've been stepping like westwards and getting online has, after we declined in total state production down to about 500,000 barrels per day. We've constantly brought stuff on at enough of a pace for the last like 2 decades or so to keep ourselves right at about 500,000. This one over here that we're now going to bring on soon is going to jump us up by 120,000, so put us back up over 600. And then we have some other ones that are about to get greenlit soon. Like down here in the south, we have Moosehead 2, the sequel, which is about 60,000. And then we have another few like 15,000 or 20,000 barrel per day fields. So as long as everything goes according to plan, we actually are now going to be in the process of climbing back upwards in terms of our total production. Uh, Probably heading up towards like 650 in total over the next few years. And Smith Bay up here, we actually found a massive field in, not as big as Prudhoe, but pretty big, like between 6 and 8 billion barrels is there, at least in the one particular field that's been found there so far. And the we're working on like the pipeline stuff to get out there. So development of that has been pushed off until the later part of this decade. But we think the initial jump up from that will be uh, between 200 and 250,000 with like production extensions after that also. But even that initial jump would then obviously put us up towards like 900,000 plus whatever also stuff, plus whatever other stuff we find along the way up until then over here. And also, since the mountains curve down here, the Brooks Range starts to curve down like that. There's more slope room down in the south that we're also looking into. So we are actually about to be back on the rise and are likely probably like around or into the 2030s. We are actually going to be going back up over 1 million barrels per day again. And by which time, hopefully, I would like to be back home in Fairbanks. That would be really nice. I don't want to be down here in the continental US in this like burning underworld nightmarescape that's full of people and crime. Like there's actually like people that live down here. I don't The people are like no. I don't want to be around a bunch of people. I would prefer to be back up home, but I have to reach a certain income level for that. And I mean, thanks to all of you guys, both from ad revenue and from just like the views and stuff, and from people who are on Patreon, and from people who donate stuff directly through PayPal and whatnot. Uh, my income level from doing this is way more than it was when I first got stranded down here. However, it is not enough to be at what would be my self-sustaining threshold back up home, at least with how expensive life is back up home, which is, this seems counterintuitive to a lot of people. It is actually cheaper. It would be cheaper for me to live on my own back up in Fairbanks as I was than it would be if I like went out of my family's house that I've been stuck in and lived on my own down here in South Carolina where I'm stranded. It is actually cheaper back up home. Uh, Minimum survival I would need to consistently make more than 700 a month, uh, like living optimally, like not living off of bread and ramen noodles, actually like getting stuff that I want. I would need probably around 900 a month or so would basically cover me, and anything like beyond $1,000 a month would be like excess luxury to me. Like I would like literally everything I could possibly need would be covered, and that would just be like excess money that I would blow off on German chocolate. Like the only thing that's really more expensive back up home is milk. Like I'll give you that. Milk is more expensive back up home in Alaska, but that's it. Like most of the rent is literally cheaper than this supposedly cheap state that like my parents live in. And also back up home, there's no water bill. Water is free. Also, heating is free because most of the buildings are heated with district heating from the waste steam from the power plants. It's piped through a district heating system through most buildings. Buildings that are within the towns, like within our Fairbanks like defined limits, which is about within like 2 or 3 miles from either of the coal-fired power stations. Beyond that, if you live outside of that, then you're not on the district heating system. Like my friends Nick and Kayla, they live. Their apartment is up in the hills, past the airport, which is out of the range that the city was willing to set up the whole district like steam pipe system for. So their apartment complex is heated. Each like set of four apartments is heated by a big heating oil furnace. But that's that kind of stuff you'll only see in in stuff outside of like the radius or in individual people's houses who like chose to not have their house like be part of the district system because they wanted to feel more independent or something, I guess. But a lot of stuff, like particularly uh, buildings, like apartments, which is obviously what I would be in, are heated via waste steam from the power plants, which we are not charged for. So heating and water are free. We also back up home have something called public transit, and it is a very well designed, very effective public transit system. And also, we have a state semi covered like health system. Uh, Actually has a few different models. One of the ones that like most people that I knew that were on it back up home in Fairbanks at least was Denali Care. That's not like it's not a full coverage, although it can be. Um, it is tailored to your income level, and also actually a lot of the the doctor's offices and also like others like dentists and like specialists and stuff also uh, have their own like separate have their own like specific arrangement with the system in that it operates like and uh, I experienced this for the first time when I had to get my ear sliced open to remove a hematoma. It operates on a if it operates on a pay what you can system. In that like the fee was $700 for getting my ear sliced open, and at the time I had like 450 on me, and so to stay safe, I wanted to kind of still have at least $50. So I told them at the desk, I was like, I can pay like 400 right now if you want to like have me pay the rest later, and they told me they told me no, don't worry about it, we'll put it off on that they'll put it off on the other thing. And so I only had to pay $400 for a $700 surgery. Although I guess it wasn't really a surgery. It was literally I just sat down in the ear. He sliced my ear open and run my ear like a towel and drained all the blood out. But I only had to pay $400 for a $700 surgery. and I literally could have paid less actually, but I didn't want to just short them just for the sake of it. So actually, life back up home is literally cheaper than down here, which is supposedly a cheap place, but uh, not what you think actually. But I mean, in Alaska's case, we're able to like provide a lot of stuff to our small citizenry because unlike say South Carolina, my state actually has something called money, whereas South Carolina is kind of perpetually broke. A few individual cities in South Carolina managed to not be broke, but South Carolina as a state is pretty broke. Also, back up home, we have functional, maintained roads with like no cracks, no potholes or anything, and we actually maintain it that way. Whereas South Carolina, there's a around the area where I'm stuck down here where my parents live. Literally every road is cracked apart 5 million different ways, and it just stays like that for eternity. Like there are some potholes in some of these roads, and I'm not talking back roads. I'm talking literal, like actual roads that are heavily used every single day. There are some that are there that have some have been there for years, and some in some parking lots have been there since like I first ran away after finishing high school back in 2012. Since I first ran up to Alaska, so that's over a decade. Some of these like massive like cracked up roads and potholes and stuff have just been sitting there. The state just doesn't do anything or can't do anything because it can't afford to do everything that it wants to do. So yes, I'd like to be back up in my eternal Arctic darkness utopia. But that's way off topic. So sorry for the rant. But let's see. Left in Cook Inlet. Not particularly. I mean, it's not Zoom, please. Thank you. It's not really large to begin with. Man, you're not even going to show names, are you? How far do you want me to zoom? How far do you want me to zoom? How far do you want me to zoom? Wow. Okay. All right. I'm not going to zoom right up to the individual waves on the ocean, but they there's not that much. I mean, it's kind of a small area to begin with, obviously. It was primarily gas that was there, not oil. The the oil is all here up on the North Slope and offshore, obviously. Although at the moment we are barred from doing anything offshore. However, the trick is the secret to that is that was politicians in Washington uh, doing stuff to look green without actually damaging the oil and gas industry. Because at the moment, none of the majors are actually interested in doing stuff offshore. They are all everything we're doing is North Slope onshore because that's where everything is. We know that it's loaded already because we keep finding so much stuff and we've done a lot of like sounding tests already and we know there's like a whole bunch of stuff out here as well. So no one was actually like going to do anything offshore for like quite a while anyways. So that was just a way for Washington to like say they did something green without having to actually like economically damage anything. And also there's a workaround to that in that there is some stuff just offshore here that some of the others we're interested in. I believe it's ConocoPhillips that's doing uh, some of the offshore stuff. Chevron is primarily the one that does the land, most of our stuff up here now. They and they're focusing mostly on the land stuff. But even for the offshore stuff, there is a caveat to the whole. This is again another Washington loophole that they left themselves to not to actually like economically hamper anything, but still say that look how green we are. We banned the big bad offshore oil. Uh, it limits the drilling platforms to only being able to go up to 3 miles offshore. However, from there they can drill horizontally as far out as they feel like it. Yeah, there's no limits on how far offshore the actual tapping is allowed to be. It's just that the infrastructure itself, the drilling platforms, and the seafloor wells are only allowed to be up to 3 miles offshore. However, the actual boreholes can be done horizontally further like outshore as far as they want. Oop, hold on. That's my alarm clock. You probably don't hear it. Usually have that set up to make sure I wake up in time to go be a mod for Josh's stream. Oh yeah, the free heat is free heat is nice. The best way I describe like the way we run Alaska is like kind of a it really counterintuitively because we do appear on the U.S. political map as a blood red conservative state, but we're not really like traditionally conservative in the way that like conservative states down in the rest of the U.S. are. Uh, like a lot of conservative states, like say Texas or now Florida, when they actually hear me talk about how things are done up in Alaska, they uh, do the shocked finger point and start screaming socialist, socialist. So we're really weird. Uh, we're uh, we're like I guess like I guess if you can say conservative socialists is a thing, then that's what we are, because we do actually provide a lot of free stuff. I mean, the stuff we chose to, although it was arranged obviously long before I first moved there. The stuff we chose to provide for free uh, once we started having all the oil money back in first starting back in the 80s was stuff that was deemed obviously critical for life. You know, water and in the Arctic, obviously heat, we kind of deemed that critical for an individual's survival. So we decided, yeah, those things should probably be free. Unless the person wants to live off of the like district heating system and have their own separate oil furnace or something, they can do that if they want to, obviously, but uh, you as the default option, we will not make you pay for heating. But a lot of people that move in from out of states are people that like want houses, and a lot of houses are kind of out of the immediate like periphery of the coal plants. So a lot of houses tend to be off the system, but there are a lot. Like a couple of my friends lived in Fairbanks for like 2 or 3 years back in the 2010s at one time, and they lived in a house. Some woman I forgot her name. I think Pan. She rented a room to them. Uh, her house and that whole entire like subdivision of houses was on the district heating system, but that was within the 3 mile power plant radius. Whereas quite a number of houses, especially people people who come in from out of states usually want to live like this like weird uh fantasy life of what they imagine life is like up home. So they tend to go for like not in the immediate vicinity of townhouses. And then they end up realizing that they moved to the Arctic and the Arctic is cold, and then they whine and complain, and then they leave and they go back down to someplace like Florida, and then they get submerged underwater when the next hurricane comes through. But yeah, the free heating and free water is nice. Obviously, we you still have to pay for electricity and for internet service, but that's not too bad. Our electricity rate is higher, even though it's coal fired. It is pretty high. Uh, we are usually most places in the state are 20 cents a kilowatt or above, uh, just because the coal is mined up here in Healy, up here in the mountains, and that it is obviously Arctic mining is kind of more difficult and expensive than regular mining. So the coal is more expensive than coal down in the regular U.S., which usually comes from an easy place like West Virginia or Kentucky. So the electricity is more expensive, but ultimately that is not enough to like stack up to make life itself more expensive than like a lot of places down in the regular US, because everything else is like either cheaper or just like so easy. Like we like life is it's easy to get around without a vehicle. That's part of how my life both was and even stuck down here still is so cheap, is not owning a vehicle, not having to pay like anything regarding it, any payments, any insurance, any fees, any fuel for myself. I used the bus, and it was awesome. Our routes are actually like designed well and everything. And uh but hold on, what else I think of? And we are one of the few no taxation states, so we don't have taxes up in Alaska. Unlike down here, South Carolina, I've been stuck actually having to give my money to the government, which is not enjoyable. Excuse me, mouse cursor. Please move. Please start moving. I will plug in a physical mouse. There we go. That threat always works. Uh, joining the Finland was already a member of the UN. Do you mean NATO? If you mean Finland joining NATO, then uh, no. Ukraine's going to go the exact same way that it already was. Uh, the the big offensive is coming, and I could be wrong. They could pull something like really unexpected, but like I've said before, my expectation would be since Russia's defenses are like the best laid around right here or so. They're what Ukraine's probably going to do is more pull an semi unexpected move. It's kind of predictable to me, but Russia has kind of proven to be like really not intelligent in any way whatsoever. So it would probably be unexpected to Russia at this point. Like the fact that human infantry waves running at the enemy doesn't work anymore is surprising to them in the modern day for some reason. But What are you gonna do? What I would expect is uh, probably they're gonna do something more over here because this area is like kind of a gap in Russia's occupation defense line because they just actually don't have enough stuff to really hold the entire thing. So I'd expect Ukraine's probably gonna like punch through around here and make it look initially like they're going towards Mariupol, because that would be like a symbolic thing to retake the city that like resisted to the last, and then not do that at the very last minute, and instead just swing west once they are deep behind the lines, because as we saw in the Kiev region, in the Kharkiv region, and in the Kherson region, when each one fell one after another, Russia doesn't do multi-layered defense. They literally just do one line of defense, and then there's nothing beyond that, because Russia is weak and incompetent. And me repeatedly saying that has driven away quite a few of my like former frequent commenters. So once they're past that, once they're behind the lines here, like midway between there and the coast, they'll likely swing west and just be plowing because there's not going to be much there. And then, even though they won't have taken like a bunch of damage because Ukraine will have punched through in a area where their defense line is thin, Russia will have no choice but to collapse their line because they'll have a massive force funneling in on a L turn arrow like this, coming in and moving west behind their lines. And once you have like a massive force like behind your what's supposed to be your front defense line, then you're just screwed. You have to collapse your line and fold in. And so that will force Russia to fold in to just the eastern portion of Kherson, at which point they'll kind of have no choice but to then retreat everything to Crimea anyways, because then they'll be in a very uncomfortable triangular wedge sandwich there, and literally everything within there will be within range, not just of the not that abundant super longer range HIMARS ammo that we've given Ukraine, but everything up here would be within regular HIMARS range, and plenty of it would be in just regular artillery range. So, like everything they have in Kherson would then be able to just get hammered. So they'd have no more choice at that point to just abandon and withdraw to Crimea. At which point, then, by like the end of summer, sometime in the fall, but definitively by the end of this year, that will be it. They'll have nothing left but Donbass and Crimea. They will literally be right back where they started, with nothing to show for the hundreds of thousands of dead people, and having lost, as of this moment right now, more than half of their land force military hardware, and quite a large number of their combat jets, and something like a third of their functional TAC helicopter fleet has been lost in Ukraine now as well. And I emphasize functional because on paper, note that on paper, Russia supposedly has like an extra 600 like older kind attack helicopters. However, as we've seen, like how they were supposed to have a few thousand extra T-80s and T-72s in storage, in reality, they only had a few hundred. The rest were just rusting away and had never been maintained, which is why they had to resort to start pulling out T-62s. And even now, as the Vatnik coping gets harder and harder, you may have seen just last week or the week before, they've now resorted to pulling out ancient T-55s and T-54s, things that were designed in the late 40s. And they've also started like mounting old, literal, not even kidding, World War II anti-aircraft guns on the backs of like on the backs of supply trucks as some kind of like makeshift version of an infantry fighting vehicle because they are secretly not they secretly don't actually have thousands of BMPs or BTRs left. They turns out that it was all a giant lie. And you know, we actually were kind of shocked by this because the thing is we actually bought in to their propaganda for like a long time, for most of the Cold War actually. You know, both culturally and militarily, as you can see as how fierce and powerful Russia is constantly portrayed in like a lot of like say video games. We literally considered them like legitimately our military equal this whole time, and it has turned out that no, they're actually pretty pathetic, and it was never real. And there's actually a NATO Wave song that was actually put up on YouTube after the after it became pretty obvious how bad they are. There was a NATO Wave song that someone made that referring to like the whole anticipated confrontation during the Cold War of what we thought was coming, referring to it as a dream or a fever dream. There is actually a song, I forgot its actual name, but the makeshift name, just because it's the key line in the song that I was calling it, was "The dream was never real," and then later in the song, "The dream was a lie all this time." So it turns out what was behind the Iron Curtain all this time, and then behind the Putin curtain, was shambles and rot. And the thing is, Russia could have actually avoided. They could have avoided the outcome that they have sealed for themselves now if they had just backed out in like the first 2 months. Even though it already went so badly for them in the first 2 months, and they took like a lot of losses, especially to like their more modern equipment. They still could have avoided like the complete buckling and implosion they've sealed themselves to now if they had backed out in those first 2 months and just after they wiped out the Azov unit in Mariupol. Like Putin could have made an excuse and said like, oh, Azov, those were the boogeyman Nazis that I was talking about, and we got them. So we win technically, and then retreat and pull everybody out of Ukraine. And he probably could have gotten away with that internally in terms of like the internal politics at home. But no, he literally every single time it becomes more and more clear that this is the doom of Russia, he just doubles down every single time. Double down, triple down. Like it is that's what's like turned me from joking about narcissism into like I think he actually is a like clinically diagnosable narcissist because that's like that is an that's an actual part of like full on clinical narcissism, as like an actual like psychological disease, or sorry, disorder, I guess, or affliction. Now disease is like offensive to say or something. Is that for like actual clinical narcissism, someone who has clinical narcissism, like it is almost like a physical compulsion. Like they cannot give in. They cannot actually like cross over the line of admitting something, like admitting that they were wrong about something, or doing an action that would be the same as admitting that they were wrong. So the fact that it does not stop, like no matter how obvious this has become, is why I've actually like crossed over the line into like thinking he actually is like legitimately a clinical narcissist because he just can't actually accept it. Now, granted, you can still argue with me and make the excuse of like if he did accept it and like admitted to everything, there's a chance he would probably end up dead, which he's probably still going to end up dead anyways. But you can still like make that argument to me maybe that like Maybe he's not like an actual narcissist, and he was just he's just doing self-life preservation, and like up until it's become so obvious at this point, like, at least for the first half of last year, he was still just throwing everything in there, trying to hope he could like cough something out. But now it's like too far gone. And like I think one of the things I said when it became pretty obvious in April of last year is when I made that video. One of my things was that Putin's gone within 2 years. Now gone, I did not specify because I could not particularly specify. That could mean dead, like he could be killed, or he might die of various medical problems that he clearly has. Uh, like we've seen the whole growing like black. We've seen the whole like growing black decay and veiny shriveling on one of his hands. That's like gradually been growing over time, which is usually like uh, a sign of like liver or kidney failure. Stuff will not specifically the hand, but just waste that should have been disposed of will start should have been filtered out of the blood will start like accumulating in random places, and eventually it'll become visible under the skin. And also, he can't stop shaking, like no matter what. Like he can't stop shaking regardless of how hard he holds on to his precious 500-foot long table, and whatever his doctors are giving him to try to quell the shaking. It's not really hiding it anymore. Now this isn't recent, obviously. Like he's probably had these conditions developing for a while, but now they've like progressed to the stage that it's not like concealable anymore. So there is also a chance he might just die from whatever problems he actually has. Or there's what I think might still be the most likely thing is that if he feels when he eventually sees that it's going to implode internally, and he feels like there's a chance someone might turn on him, I actually think it's more likely he's probably just going to uh, retire somewhere, and by that I mean flee to somewhere that would be welcoming of him, like uh, Tehran, maybe, although they're a bit risky because they might flip inwards. Of like the more likely options in that particular case, I think would probably be Cuba or Venezuela. Venezuela would be a better choice in lieu of all his options because Venezuela at least is able to still maintain function for its upper class, which he would be like hugged into. Whereas Cuba, everything is falling apart in Cuba, even for Cuba's upper class. And yes, supposedly communist countries or countries that try to be as close to communism as they can, yes, even they have upper classes because human beings are human beings and are inherently corrupt, and whoever is in power will inherently give their buddies like favors and give them access to all the best stuff, and then they in turn will give their buddies favors and access to all the best stuff. So whatever system you put in place economically is irrelevant. There's always going to form an upper class, and it has nothing to do directly with money. It has everything to do with just people hooking up their personal friends with stuff because that's how humans work. But yeah, they're going to pull probably a swing in and collapse maneuver uh, that will crush everything down into just Kherson, in which case everything will be within strike range of everything Ukraine has, so they'll have to pull back to Crimea, where Russia has more air defense assets that could counter more stuff. And then uh, they Russia does still have access. Russia does still have like the additional portions of Luhansk that they seized. However, they're probably actually going to end up willingly just pulling out of those because once it comes to that point to where they're just where they have to pull everything in the south back to Crimea, then they're going to be, as they kind of already have been, which is should be key to you, that as an inside look, basically, that they themselves know how bad their position is now, and how pathetic whatever they have left militarily is. They are actually really seriously like preparing themselves for Ukraine reclaiming Crimea. So once it comes down after this year's major push and reclamation of the South, once it comes down to them being pushed back into Crimea, I'd actually wager Russia's probably going to willingly pull out of the seized Luhansk areas in the north of that oblast, and reroutes like all that stuff to Crimea in preparation for that. Because in the end, um, surprise, surprise, the whole thing about protecting ethnic Russians was a lie and meant nothing. It was a pretext. Uh, they don't actually care about Donbass. They do care about Crimea. They do want Crimea. Uh, just because of the Sevastopol naval base and infrastructure, and also they have a really there's a good Russian historian who has his own channel, Vlad Vexler. You should watch him. Uh, people keep people keep commenting to me about Peter Zion. Stop watching Peter Zion. Is really like he's really grandiose about everything, and everything is always decades and decades with him, and is also wrong with him usually. Someone who is actually like correct about a lot of stuff and has called a lot of stuff correctly and actually knows Russia, who I turn to for like a lot more like deeper cultural stuff, is Vlad Vexler. I learned from him. It's Crimea that Russia cares about more than a lot of other stuff, because they have a really, and he doesn't like to he doesn't like to use like too harsh language, but even he called it like delusional or delirious. Russia has like a delirious level of obsession with Crimea that is not actually really based on the whole Sevastopol naval base and Black Sea stuff, because they have they have other, they have Novosibirsk, and that they have other like access to the Black Sea. So it's not really about that. It's about a like a deeper cultural obsession that like it started with Katarina or Catherine the Great. Uh, they developed this is our Greece, or that this is our Greek uh, our Greek island, or something like that. They developed this like deep cultural obsession with Crimea, which is why a lot of people say that that like potentially losing Crimea would be the cultural like inward death blow for the current regime. Whereas like Donbass, the general Russian population at large doesn't really care about the people of Donbass, but Crimea would, or in the case of what's going to happen in reality, will end up doing it. And then the like restrained, unexpressed anger that a lot of the Russian people have about the hundreds of thousands of you know their relatives that have been sent to just die in what have now devolved into meat waves, particularly in Bakhmut and places like Kremina, and in what you could call motorized meat waves down in Vuhledar. They're basically just meat waves down there as well. However, they are actually motorized. They are sending them in vehicles, as opposed to them being infantry meat waves in Bakhmut and Kremina. They Russia does have like a learned it does have a learned factor from over the course of history of like restraining their anger at mass casualties until either they like suffer a loss, like something they consider a massive blow to them, to their cultural psyche, or the or as Vlad Vexler actually said, usually there's a like threshold of actual like people loss that you have to cross over before then they decide, okay, that's enough of soaking the soil with our blood, and that threshold has only been crossed a few times. Uh, one of which was famously World War One, after something like a million Russian troops died in combat, and a million more were died of like starvation and disease. Then the Russian people revolted and turned on the Tsar. And before that, during their war with Japan over in the east, over in the Amur region and Primorsky region, that war went so horribly. Japan like pounded them so badly that they were losing hundreds of thousands of guys over there. I forget what the grand total was. Once you add in the guys who died from hypothermia and malnutrition and disease as well, that the Russian people actually, people forget the first one. They actually revolted in 1905 as well. They turned on the Tsar then. However, uh, he conceded to like most of the people's demands then, and so he wasn't actually overthrown and didn't die that time. In 1917, and then past that, he didn't like concede to all the demands um, until he, had a literal gun to his head, and then even after that, they still shot him anyways. And then uh, before that, a similar situation happened in the Crimean War back in the 1850s, I think, or the 1860s, where Russia eventually Russia was forced to give up because everyone had had it with the war back then. When the casualty count got too high, I think it was like a bit over 500,000 were lost in the Crimean War, which was even more pointless than World War One. Whereas World War One was just a bunch of countries saying "I got you, bro," every time one declared war on another. And in reality, the if you look back at like the statements that like politicians of each of the countries were making to each other, it wasn't World War Two. There was not a good side and a bad side in World War One. There was only literally everyone in that war was morally bankrupt. Everyone in that war was literally fighting to either maintain their economic that their position of economic supremacy over the continent, or to establish themselves in the case of uh, in the case of Russia and Germany, they were on separate sides, but they were going for the same thing. They wanted to forcibly establish themselves as new centers of economic dominance over the continent. And 20 something million people died for this, for economic dominance. Whereas, World War II is like, that was one of like the few wars in history. Is like, yeah, that's a really justified war. The people who consider themselves on the good side are actually on a good side. That like you're actually fighting against something. You're fighting against a force of mass conquest and genocide, not just in Europe but over in Asia as well. That everyone constantly seems to forget about. The Japanese also massacred tens of millions of people over there. A lot of it they did through starvation as opposed to like gas chambers, but they also did a lot of like actual massacring as well, including burning down cities with all the civilians still in them. But anyways, the Crimean War was even more pointless than World War One. So there, quick rundown because I've been going for long enough, and I'll end the stream soon. Uh, there was a title, literally a title of defender of the Christians within the Ottoman Empire, and Russia, the Tsar of Russia, had constantly held this title, but then the King of France or Emperor of France, whoever he was at the time, wanted it. So it got transferred to him, but then Russia was pissed, and so it got transferred back to Russia. But then France was pissed because he wanted the title, and then France got their gang buddy England involved, and they came over and they all fought over it. And there was some other stuff, like they figured, each side figured, well, we do have something to gain if we win this war now that it started, but it literally started over a ceremonial title of, uh, you know, uh, figurative defender of the Christians within the Ottoman Empire. And at least I forgot the casualties that England and France suffered, but at least on Russia's end, literally 500,000 people died for this. And well, nothing from chat other than Josh. Okay, so that's my long rambling mess that you sent me down with one single comment. So the end result of that is, once the final failure comes home, then the Russian Federation is done. That fate's been sealed. However, the massive, like, every oblast immediately becomes a country jigsaw puzzle that you see on, like, people's Twitter posts. Uh, that is a bunch of nonsense. That's not how it's going to go. Because for one, a lot of the ethnic based stuff that some of those people are basing that on is not how the situation is anymore. Like a lot of those, quite a number of those ethnic groups don't even exist anymore because, lo and behold, the Soviet Union was internally, particularly under Stalin, at least, it got way less evil post Stalin. But under Stalin, it was actually kind of evil on the inside. It was a bit black hearted and tended to, like, genocide ethnic minorities that it didn't want. Like the Tartars tried to kill off a lot of the Tartars, failed. Thankfully, they survived. Tried to kill off quite a lot of other groups and succeeded with quite a few of them, and has nearly succeeded with quite a few others. So in the quote unquote republics that are named after like ethnic groups, in a lot of them, the ethnic group is like such an obscure minority now that it's not like actually a basis for some kind of separation, and that they like don't have cohesion with each other anymore. And some of them actually do want to remain a part of Russia. They and have actually like said that explicitly, like Mordovia does. The ones, however, that still have that have a large like ethnic base of their separate group and have semi-autonomous systems already. Like they're basically kind of spring-loaded and ready to go the moment separation becomes a real thing, and have like straight up announced publicly and said in the past that they want to be separate. Uh, those are Chechnya, obviously, Dagestan, Kalmykia, and Tatarstan, and Bashkiri. Maybe Kabardino right there. Maybe. But that is a hard maybe. They're kind of a split 50-50. And then the only other ones really are Tuva and Buryatia. However, Buryatia, a lot of Buryats are also over here in Zabaykalsky, which doesn't have too many Russians. So Buryatia would probably like Zabaykalsky as well. Beyond that, there's not much really. I mean, I kind of actually I depicted it on my Maxo NATO map. So this is this is kind of like the most likely how I feel it would generally go. In terms of how the split down the middle, which is something I basically would bank on some kind. That's like the only real uncertainty is like I can't tell you for certain like where exactly the split would be or how they would define it. The only thing is that people argue with me over this arm that is over here past the Urals. So what I did is I basically just made the border the Ob River, as there's a river here that runs like this called the Ob River, because that basically it comes down like this and then encompasses this part north of Kazakhstan, which is basically where most of the like Russian population east of the Urals lives, and also it reaches out to Novosibirsk, which is about as far east as like what I'm referring to as cultural attachment or loyalty to core Russia or regular Russia seems to stretch in terms of like Russians I've talked to and asked about it. It seems that that stretches up until about Novosibirsk, where it then tips over the 50-50 scale into everybody referring to like actual ethnic Russians living in Siberia off to the east. Everyone beyond that point actually kind of feels pretty separate. And a lot of them, particularly those I spoke to from over in Primorsky, around like Vladivostok, and some people from like Khabarovsk. A lot of them actually really despise the Western like core Russia because they're the whole of Siberia essentially, except for a few specific mining districts, is essentially like legitimately mistreated and just discarded as a revenue source. And Russia has tried to like bury the fact that this happened, but uh, back during it was either the late '90s or early 2000s, a chunk of the Far East actually did try to set things up to separate on their own, and however, that was put down by internal security forces pretty quickly. So the mentality and desire is actually there. That's kind of been proven. So there's going to be a split down the middle of sorts where the big eastern chunk breaks away. I can't like say for certain like where that's going to happen or how it's going to be defined. The 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 six like breakaways here or seven, those are like those are like the certain things that I would tell you like that's definitive, basically border wise. The only thing is like the split down the middle is like I don't know exactly how that's going to go. Uh, but I'm confident enough that uh, it's not it's not just going to be a like Ural split like people keep depicting it as. I'm pretty sure there is probably going to be this like sort of arm extension past them, uh, just because like the the bulk of the like Russian people that live past the Urals here in this area, just for like this stretch, do feel like more definitively attached to regular core Russia, as opposed to like everyone like out in Siberia, and especially over in the Far East. But yeah, this is going to be the end result of all this. That fate's been sealed now. Uh, Probably could have been avoided if, like I said, if Putin backed out within like the first couple months, but not. It's been double down, double down, double down, triple down. So this is locked in. Uh, Losing Crimea is probably what's going to be the like big hammer that will actually like knock things into being internal, as in the war will or the not like the violence, although there may be some of that as well, but the whole upset of the war will finally come home and turn internal, and then it all falls apart. However, uh, Peter, what Peter Zion said though about Russia's like oil production going offline for decades and decades because all the Western industries that were basically propping it up and had recovered it for Russia post USSR collapse have left. That is he's kind of a bit out there on that. It would not take that long once everything like forms out like this and everything's all settled. Once outside oil industries come back in, it would not take them that long to like fire everything back up. Like once they were allowed in the 90s, it only took them a few years, not even a single decade, barely half a decade. I think like just over half a decade, like 5 or 6 years to turn Russia's at the time collapsed oil production back around and get it to come back up swinging. So it would be the same story. It would take a few years for them to work everything out once they're allowed back in, but it would not be offline for decades and decades and decades. So I'm not. I think he just has an obsession with saying the phrase decades and decades. But I don't know. Maybe he has secret knowledge that I don't or something. But Russia's oil production has been restored before, and it did not take decades. It took about half of one decade once oil majors were allowed in. So once they come back in, it will probably take about half a decade again. Granted, Russia won't be able to its production won't be able to be restored to the same levels because of how field degradation works when they're offline for a long time. But it will still probably be able to be brought up to like 10 million barrels a day as opposed to like the 11 million that they were at just before the invasion started. All right, and nothing from chat. So that's going to be it for this one then. Uh, this ended up being longer than I thought, as all of them always do. Like an extra 45 minutes beyond just talking about who could replace whose resource provision. But anyways, thank you everybody. Uh, thank you everybody who came. Anybody who donates anything through Patreon or the PayPal links that are on like the channel and of other videos. Thank you to you, extra especially, and I will see you all.